Since the dawn of the 2010s, the ex-Blizzard developer marketing tactic has been applied to many games that end up being disappointments. The big reason why Blizzard games are so popular is because of the production value. Since Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, Blizzard Entertainment has been way ahead of the pack on production value. When they would release a game, it would be the most polished version game of that genre without a lot of competition. You can basically see this with all their games that have succeeded. MMORPGs got blown out of the water with World of Warcraft. Hearthstone basically did the same thing again with digital card games. And Overwatch revived a dying hero shooter as people were wishing for something more than just Team Fortress 2. All of these games had insanely high production value compared to their competitors, and so they were basically guaranteed to dominate the market. Any entertainment product needs a hook and a sinker. The hook being ultimately what catches your interest, the sinker being what keeps you engaged with the product long term. There was always some gameplay innovation and design genius with Blizzard games, but I would still say that the hook for Blizzard games is their production value, and the sinker for Blizzard games is their production value in comparison to other products. A game that didn't work out well was Heroes of the Storm. A game that was actually really good, but it couldn't compete against League of Legends and Dota 2, games which were also being funded by billion-dollar companies. Had a game like Heroes of the Storm been released 4 years earlier, it could have been a completely different story. And this is where we get to the problem of the ex-Blizzard developer. I play a lot of unfinished games as tit for tat for getting user feedback for my own games. When you play these games, it's rough, and you know that they are incomplete. But maybe there is some merit behind the ideas. Most of the time though, the games are doomed to be fairly mid. And that's not because the ideas are inherently bad, it's because the ideas have been done before and to a very high level. When you're a small indie dev, it's basically impossible to compete on production value unless you're really early to the party with a new genre. This means that you have to go blue ocean and try to find value in areas that aren't being catered to. You have to find your hook without relying on production value. The issue with ex-Blizzard developers is that they try to act like they're still the powerhouse behemoths in the red ocean. I recently played the Stormgate beta and I was fairly disappointed. You do have your "it's just beta bro" defenders, which has some merit, but I think the larger issue with Stormgate is that it just doesn't do anything new in the RTS genre. It's a mix of Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2. And while mixing those concepts is technically different, it doesn't feel like a new experience. Which means that Stormgate has to compete on production value with all of the pre-existing RTS games. At the moment it's still early days, so it's not impossible considering their $40 million in investment. Oh, this isn't good. The hook of Stormgate is that it promises to have production value as its sinker, and that just isn't good enough in the modern landscape of gaming. Sure, it can get you investments, but does that actually make the game have any value post-release? A lot of these ex-Blizzard developers need a factory reboot their mindset and understand that they're now a small fish in an ocean and have to play by a completely different set of rules. If you cannot compete on production value, you have to innovate. And this means taking risks and putting yourself in situations where failure isn't all or nothing. As an example, the pitch for my game, Healed to Death, is MMORPG healing meets roguelike. The concept of a single-player healer game is really underdone, and I think that combining this with dungeon delving and roguelike elements gives my game a real hook. Especially since I don't think there is currently any game quite like it on the market. The only game vaguely similar to it is Mini Healer, and it's obvious that despite being both healer-driven roguelikes, they are completely different games. They have much more of a boss battle simulator, mine is more of a dungeon exploration simulator. Either way, if you're interested in Healed to Death, please wishlist the game on Steam. Going back to ex-Blizzard devs, they really need to focus on creating a good hook that isn't based around high levels of production value. And it's important to understand that good hooks are very much a time and place thing. I previously talked about Heroes of the Storm missing the mark despite being a great game, but let's give an example of a game that had brilliant timing. Torchlight is a single-player ARPG that began production around the same time that Diablo 3 was announced. The ARPG genre hadn't developed much since Diablo 2, and with the renewed excitement of Diablo 3, there was a real opportunity to create a modernized 3D ARPG during this time window before the release of Diablo 3. Torchlight was fairly low scope, made in a year, and it ended up being a decent quality ARPG with the only real complaint being that it was single player only. It's also one of the few occasions of ex-Blizzard devs succeeding. But would Torchlight, a single-player, low-poly ARPG succeed in today's market? Almost certainly not. There are arguments that can be made about the value of a game with the 2 cakes comic, but that just assumes there's only 2 cakes. When it's 20 cakes, your game doesn't stand out, and it's not even worth people's time, let alone their money. There is an abundance of high quality and polished ARPGs nowadays, and the only way to stand out without high production value is to do something that nobody else is doing. This itself is risky and may lead to you finding out that your hook isn't actually that interesting. But it's also the only way to realistically succeed, so you have to set yourself up for the ability to fail quickly and recover quickly. I know that a lot of indie devs will do game jams until they make something that is actually kind of fun. Healed to Death is based on a game jam game I made, and that's why it has given me the confidence to pursue this concept. As a solo indie dev, my only path to success is by making games that nobody else is making. As your team grows and the production value improves, the less risks you need to take in order to stand out. But you gotta understand that a team of 20 professionals isn't that big anymore. I'm not saying you have to go full blue ocean, I'm just saying that you're gonna get destroyed if you don't bring something new to the table. If there is a chance this reaches an ex-Blizzard developer, I'd really advise that you start by making smaller scope games than trying to outcompete your previous employer. Your experience does count for something, but building success off success is significantly easier than building success off nothing. And I think you're starting off a lot closer to nothing than you realize. If all you can realistically bring is a downscaled version of production value, you're gonna have to go for more niche games and make sure that you become the kings of that genre. Which, by the way, is actually what Blizzard used to do. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're interested in more video game discussions. Also, wishlist Healed to Death on Steam. It's still in early development, so I'll have a ton of updates to talk about in the future.